or if you have other colleagues within your buildings who like to go through this, this is a great way to get a good introduction to who eDynamic Learning is and why Responsive Education Solutions has kind of made this partnership. Some of you actually may know my name. Karpus is my last name, Scott. If you've met my mother, Phyllis, that is my mother. If you've ever been in the home office there in Human Resources, you probably have dealt with her over the years or one of her staff members. But I personally have been in online education since 1995, a very long time. And some of you I know from way back in different publishing days. And appreciate the journey that we all keep on going on to provide excellence for students. And the heart and passion behind eDynamic Learning is, number one, to develop digital content. But specifically, we really had a vision 6 years ago when we were reminded of our founder, who was from Canada, grew up in snow country. Being a Texan, I can't relate, but my dad was born in Buffalo. He could relate, but where there's usually several feet of snow for at least 5 months of the school year, from usually around Halloween to Easter. There's usually white snow on the ground. And our founder, who was a tenured teacher in Canada and also a humanities chair, and department chair for the District of Calgary, really reflected back in his own high school experience, reflecting back that his first class of the day was woodshop. And that's really what kept him motivated, walking 2.5 kilometers in the snow every day. And his second class was Algebra 1. That was his intro to high school experience in 9th grade. After that, he began reflecting about what would have happened if it was opposite. What if Algebra 1 was first, the class that he still does not like too well, math, and it was woodshop second? Would he have a different outcome? Would he have been a dropout? Would he have not connected? So it was that interesting elective class that he was able to connect to and had a great joy of getting up early and walking 2.5 kilometers to school in the snow. So that's the story about how we started, and he pretty much told his wife, 2 little kids at that time, not quite school age, said, I'm going to leave a tenured position. In Canada, that's a little over 100,000 that you make a year as tenure as a teacher. And he said, I really felt calling and leading to develop unique courses that will help shape students' path to college and path to career. And I know it's much like your story in Premier especially, where you're getting students there that may be disinterested or had a bad experience, and they need to reconnect with great educators like yourself, as well as really good content that might spark that light of interest. And so eDynamic Learning, we focus in really on 2 areas. We always have called this kind of elective, but as the career genre is being awakened in many different states and even provinces now, we kind of added that career into our section here. But we really have 2 categories of classes. There are categories, as you can see on your screen, that would be career endorsements. So as you're looking on the screen, I can give you an idea what that looks like. So in a humanities endorsement, those are all classes that pretty much Texas is pretty lenient in that category, that you can get up to 2 credits in the area of humanities or social sciences that are not the world history and world geography type courses that do have specific peaks. But courses like anthropology, even world religions, criminology, psychology, peer counseling, these are all courses that would be in a humanities endorsement. In the area of a business endorsement, you saw on the previous screen a sports marketing course. Hopefully in January, we'll be releasing another Texas code. I think it's called Advertising and Sales Promotion. That's another example of that. Entrepreneurship is obviously in a business pathway. We do have a few courses in that human services endorsement where you're talking about cosmetology or hospitality, culinary arts. That's in the whole area of human services. So that's a little range of what we do on the career endorsement side. And we also have a STEM 1 course, biotechnology, that's in that STEM endorsement track if students are looking for STEM endorsement. And then we have this year some alternative options if you have graduates under the new plan, the House Bill 5 plan. There is an option for an advanced English, and we have just released a course called Lord of the Rings. And in Texas, that is literature of a genre, and that is a 1 credit course that can qualify under that new advanced elective of English instead of a student taking the traditional British literature is what they typically take in English 4. So if they're under House Bill 5, that would be a great option. And really lastly, it just gives students that have an interest in a certain area. Maybe they have an interest in literature and they like literature. So we have classes like mythology, which is also literature of a genre. We have Gothic literature, which is about reading some ancient works, some older works, from Frankenstein and Dracula. We have a number of humanities electives like social problems is a good example of what you see. Really have just a wide range of courses. There's around 40 or so that do align with the Texas standards. And each building you can kind of decide what you want to use as far as what applies to your locality and location. But we continue writing about 10 to 12 new courses a year that really have a focus in that career and electives. So that's what makes us unique, in that we don't write those courses like RES does, like the biologies and the physical sciences and the integrated physics and chemistry and chemistry. That traditional track, we really stay in that peripheral area that is called career and elective courses. So that's kind of who we are and kind of where we are today and what brought us to this point. So the goal today is really just to give you a little closer view onto how the program is being delivered into the premiers. We have partnered with Responsive Education, so our courses are delivered in one of their LMS environments, which is known as Brain Honey by Gillix. Great organization, and so about 6 months ago we actually started setting this up in the background, and now we're just getting to the launching stage and bringing this to the premieres for this fall and spring. So if you don't see courses here that are not in your site, Terry Bowman and the team can get with you later about what is your site and login, but we do have an admin login for every one of your sites. So each site would have their own settings. It would just be their students. So everything is in that single setting of your school like it is now. So this one I logged into was an Abilene one. Abilene may not be on the phone today. But just for a review perspective, I was going to quickly review this. Now, if you have any questions before I go into review, this is a great time to text me a question in the box here. And also to help you on a credit perspective, majority of our courses are designed for a semester, a traditional half credits. They are self-paced, much like the individualized packets or the things you use. Students can work at their own pace, and don't be surprised if they finish in 9 weeks, because they actually have something they enjoy. That's a little different than having to take Algebra 1 or geometry. It's a little different motivation side on that student. Some courses do have a Part 1 and a Part 2. So health science is a good example of that. Social problems, psychology, sociology, digital photography, which is, yes, and the question was just asked in a minute. Actually, the majority of our courses are 0.5 credits. The Lord of the Rings course, I actually recommend that is a 1 credit course. And that course is unique in that actually are watching the films, those 3 modern films, as they go through this course. They're watching the films and they're learning more about the life of J.R. Tolkien and what motivated him to write in this whole really kind of a new era of writing or topic area of fantasy or mythology even. So the Lord of the Rings course could be done to do that. You could combine Gothic literature and mythology as well. That is both literature of a genre, but the Lord of the Rings is a 1 credit course. Most courses are half credits, but there are a few, and I can tell you what those are. Those typically are courses that have demonstration standards. So Art and World Cultures is a good example. That's an Art Level 1 course because it has things you do outside of that. Culinary Arts is another great example because you are making things, you're baking things. It's not just working on the computer. There's some things outside of that. Entrepreneurship is another example of a 1 credit course. Cosmetology would be another example. And I think there's a document where I laid this out under eDynamic where the TEKS are and also where the suggested credit value is. But for the majority, 90% of these are in that 0.5 credit. And again, some courses have a semester 1, semester 2. Forensic science is a very popular one. It does have a semester 1 and a semester 2 as well. So that's just a good background, and this is also a great place if your students have interest in a certain area. I would encourage them to visit here, because what they can do is they can click on the title, and if they want to see what involves social problems, it's a great way for them to look at, okay, here's kind of the overview, here's what's covered in each of the chapters that we discuss. So it's a great way for them to investigate before they kind of say, yes, I would like to take this as one of my credits to earn towards graduation. Is there any other questions? I'm going to go through just really the simple design and simple structure of a course, both from a teaching side and a student side. So everybody has an admin login, and I really encourage you at your site to kind of have one person, it doesn't have to be you, that enrolls students in courses. This makes it a lot easier if just one person does that, especially in the sizes that you are. When you're in schools of thousands, it's different, but if you're in that probably 300 or less student range, I'd recommend one of you kind of take control of that part. And in the difference between an admin login and a student or teacher login, the only difference is you see this wonderful little icon up here that is like a cogwheel and a gear. And this is where you would go in here. The very first thing as you go in here is to add a user. So in this one, I'm going to create just a demo user for you. So if I went to find a user, this is where I could double check to make sure who's in the system or who's not in the system. So I actually have one already. It's called test student, and the login is Abilene student. So what I'll do in here is I actually will add a test teacher in here as well on Abilene. I encourage you maybe to do this in your site so your teachers can get used to how things are laid out. I think that's and I'll keep this consistent with the other logins that were made there. If you do have an email address as a teacher, I encourage you to put that in there as your email address. Some schools, if students have ID numbers, they'll use the external ID. You do not have to do that. If you are enrolling students, I would just always encourage you to use the password of student, and then when they get in the program for the first time, they can change their password. That just kind of makes it easier and less taxing on you. So now we have a test teacher and we have a test student. So once you have added that user, which again, I'll recap here, and we are recording the session, you go to the cogwheel, and so either go right to create a new user, and that will bring you up to that new user box, or you go right into what I always do just to make sure you did not enter something. I know I might not be the only one that suffers from a short memory, but maybe there's some others in that group that do. I always just check that when you hit find and you leave it blank just to make sure you didn't double enter the student. All these kind of use a database, so if you want to sort alphabetically by something, if you are looking for a student in the last name, you can just click on that and it'll arrange things in that alphabetical order so you can find that easier. So if you did do it from this screen, you would just simply hit new user. That's really step one. Step two now is I'm going to put students in courses. And so on this calendar here, when it says courses, right, we did users, now we can do courses. There actually are several different ways to do this. You can go right to find a course. So if I was to go into find a course, let's do careers in criminal justice. I have a couple options. I can leave it blank, and it'll bring up all the titles that are in my domain. And I think careers may not be added over here yet. So what I will do, and this one is go to the ones I know. So another way that you can enroll students is go right to the course that you see in front of you. And if you don't have these course titles, Terry and her team will make sure you get those. And we already have one student that is enrolled in this course, which is great, because that's a good way for us to review what's there. And so now I want to actually enroll that teacher we just did. So I want to enroll a teacher in anthropology. So I will do find a student or teacher in a course and find a course to enroll. So the course I want to find is anthropology. And we have an option of 1 and 2. So I want to do 1. And I want to find the user to enroll. So you can leave that blank again, and we'll bring up all your users. So in this case, I'm going to bring up a teacher. The only difference between a teacher and a student is when you get this screen to enroll a person, you have an option to change the role. So if it's a teacher that's monitoring that work and grading any student work that may appear, you want to go in there and change that to teacher. For the teacher, you can leave this up for a year. I would suggest that maybe even extend it further, just so you don't have to go edit that in the future. But if you are on a student enrollment, so if I picked on this student enrollment, I would just show you over here. We've already enrolled the student, but I'm going to go up here. If you ever make a mistake of any kind, you can just hit edit. So you can see on this edit feature that they're all a student, so you don't change anything. At the end of the course, when the student is done, you would go back and edit enrollment and mark that as complete, or maybe you mark that as withdrawn. If they withdrew for whatever reason, just mark withdrawn or complete, or usually the most things are used. And all that does is take that student off your current screen, so you don't have to monitor that student from that perspective. I would use a calendar in the side. What the calendar does for the student is it creates a lesson plan or a pacing guide for that student. So if I know the student is going to start, let's just say the student is starting today, which we'll say today is August 11th, and they're going to finish this course maybe right before Christmas. They're going to get done a couple weeks early. And what that does for that student is actually going to create a lesson plan for that student so they know how to keep on pace and keep on task. So I'm going to log out and actually log into our student. So I think our student was student _ Abilene. I may have to check this twice, but we'll see. No, okay, so I'm going to go back and check this. Remember what it was? I don't remember what it was, so. Okay, I think I got this backwards. There we go, I got it backwards. Always forget which one it is. So I'm going to go and go into that student. So if I want to find that user, I want to see what their password is, which is demo student, the test Abilene student. And I want to change their password to what I know, which is student. And now I'm going to log out and log back in. There we get it. So now what the student will see, they're just going to see their course they have now, and any activities or lessons that's due the very next week. They'll see what is due the very next week. So it's very easy for them to navigate. All they do is simply click on this icon to launch it. And in the launch mode here, all these are very designed to be college ready. So I have two daughters at STEM, and they're both taking college classes. So before they started taking college classes, all my words were theory, but now they're basically truth, because I very much can identify with our design of how typical college courses work, is that they all start with a very defined course syllabus. This helps the student kind of stay on track and not ask you different times what's worth what point and what are we covering next. It really puts that student in control and gives you those point values. We don't grade the work, but we give you an idea of what assignments are worth what in terms of points. And so every course in eDynamic is consistently the same too. That's another key component. You have 4 or 5 units, midterm exam, 4 or 5 units, and then a final term exam. And so the first 3 parts of it are kind of what I call the forward of a book that no one reads. And we have narrated those parts. So you have a title, summary, and objectives that are narrated automatically, and will highlight certain key words as the student goes through that and reads that. And then you get into lesson content, where you have a series of lessons. And these lessons also, if a student needs reading support, we actually went in the studio, even when we had 2 courses and very little money, and said we need to narrate content. Text-to-speech is okay. We're thankful that Stephen Hawkins and others can use that, but for learning, it's not really the greatest tool. So we said we're going to have real male and real female voices in studio and quality production and narrate. So we actually made that in a podcast. So if students don't have internet at home, we have a lot of students that will just download that to a phone and listen to their lesson being read, and then come back and start doing their student works. From just a design perspective, we often start off with the driving questions. And this is a good example one. Did you ever ask, why are people in other parts of the world so different from us? So in photography, we ask a question like, what does, what was the last picture you saw? Why do people take photographs? So those are the types of driving questions that we do, kind of engage that student in, and telling a good story so the student would be engaged. And then they have, at the end of this unit, there's basically 2 assignments that a student would do where they get a chance to answer questions. One of the things we knew from the very beginning, and you'll have access to through Terry Bowman and their team, Teacher's Guide, we'll send all of you a new link to today so you can just download the ones you need. They're in a separate PDF. But we knew, especially being a history teacher that I was and a humanities teacher that our founder was, we always hated textbooks that had very incomplete answers to things, and they just said responses vary and you had no clue what to do. Unfortunately, you just kind of checked it and said, oh, that looks good, instead of really check it. So we know that in all these questions, even if it's a variance question, we still give you an idea as a teacher how to do that. From a practical side, I always encourage teachers, you don't have to check it every day. Guess what? When they go to college, your teacher's not checking what you turn in every day. They're checking maybe once a week if you're lucky. Unfortunately, some of them 3 weeks. But I do, on the high school side, I recommend that you just kind of check in twice a week to see where the students are at. Make it a habit of Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Thursday, whatever you can to be consistent. Kind of also helps that student know when to expect your grading. But it definitely is something you don't have to do every day. Just check in there. And so what they will do in this format, and as you do other courses within a standard LMS, they have a submission option. So if they're doing using Blackboard or Canvas in their dual credit classes, they're going to be very used to this format where a student is choosing files, and they're on those files they're going to post different things in here. And I'll see if I have any files. I think this is my son's login here. So let's see if we got a file we can attach. So here's one for my daughter. So I will attach that file. That's one option they can do. They can attach a file, or they can answer the questions freehand response. There is a built-in text editor too. They can make it look fancy. We recommend they attach a document. If you have Google Docs, they also can just put a link in there, and the teacher can go to the Google Docs. If they are in this feature here, rating, and they're not complete, they do want to save it. And then once it's ready to be submitted, like this one's ready to be submitted, then I will go in there and submit the assignment. And now I've submitted that assignment to be graded. For the student to know, and like other LMSs, there's usually a little icon that a student can see. They know that that work has been submitted or turned in to the teacher. The 2 other elements in here, there is at the end of this unit, like you have in your other things, a test, a quiz. It is all auto-scored, and we do use a data bank of questions. So if you did have to resend a test again to a student, it randomly selects those out of a question bank, typically 25, and it will pull 15 questions out. And in your teacher's guide, we have the full list of questions. So if they ever question you or want to question a question, you do have a list of that information that you definitely can refer to if you need that. And then the part that makes Lord of the Rings really interesting, right, is that we actually link that movie where they're watching a piece of the film as they go through the course. In this case, we take in here and look for great online resources. It might be a video here. It might be a whole range of things from Rice University, where we're integrating really great content and listening to TED Talks and a lot of different things that we find to be very valuable to that student, kind of getting used to that professional lecture environment as well. And they would just answer those questions and put them in the answers. The last thing there is, right before the quiz, there is a little interactive game that a student does. It's a Wheel of Fortune based game. There's not a grade on it, but it does help them study for the test. And this is probably the thing that shocked me the most as a dad in really understanding in modern high schools today. We really don't teach our students what college is going to look like. Two of my daughters are doing college work right now as dual credit students, Abigail and Michaela, and this really was their very first time to learn how to respond in a discussion forum. So this is a great great way to introduce students to what this looks like, and maybe in a soft way where it's not as critiqued as hard as a college would be. So you're really looking from a teacher side, did they participate? It's not the same level of critique as college, but just to let you know, in my experience, anywhere from 18 to 50% of a student's grade is based on this one element that's known as threaded discussion or discussion forming, where a student has to in the college day, they have to respond, and then they have to post, and they have to respond to other students. In our case, they really just have to post. The good thing from your side is they're getting used to that type of environment, and they also can see how other students respond to these questions to learn a little more outside of their own culture, to learn what others are doing around that. So that's the nature of how the course is laid out. Our midterm exam, it only covers Unit 1 to Unit 4, and our final term exam covers 5 to 8. And the midterm exam and final term exam simply come from the data bank of questions that we asked before, and it randomly pulls 45 of those questions in that. So there's typically a data bank of 100 to 125 questions. So again, if you have to reassign something to a student, no worries, you can do that because they're going to get a different variation of that test. It's not repeating the same test over and over again. And so now I'm going to go into as a teacher, and I think you said, was it teacher-Ameline? And teacher. Okay, it's back. Okay, it's the other way. There we go. Ameline, teacher, maybe. There we go. And so in this box, this is kind of where you'll live out twice a week where you're checking work. In this box here, I've logged in as a teacher. Remember I said you don't have the cogwheel because we're just a teacher. It's going to mark any student that's falling behind that lesson plan. It uses a yellow and uses a red, green flashlight, stoplight system. So obviously yellow we all know is caution and red means critical. So you're going to monitor really those students that are not on track. And that's where you need to engage students and kind of find out what's happening. So the graph reflects their grade, and the guy running, or the little stick figure running here, reflects their pace. Are they on time for completing at the time that you set originally? And the left, these are any items that requires you to score. So that would be that component. And again, you have a complete teacher guide that goes along with this. Very easy to use. And you would go in here and assess this. There's a couple different options you have. You can come to say 95%, basically 9.5 points. You also can even send the student notes. Really, in this virtual school world, it's great. My students learn the most from teachers that, at the college level anyway, that really did use this feature of giving positive feedback or critical feedback on an area. So it's a great way to encourage students, even if it's just say, hey, I really enjoyed reading that. I really like some of the goals you set up for yourself. That's a great way to send feedback in that. But for the sake of scoring, you have a couple options. You can put in the full credit value. You can put in a partial value. You could even allow a student to skip over this if you wanted to, or you could allow a student to retry. So maybe if it's creative writing or mythology where they're doing more writing, you can comment on their student document and reload that as a teacher document. So now they can go back and maybe take a rough draft and put it into a final draft format and then resubmit that. And you would do that by hitting that allow retry. For our sake today, we're just going to submit score. Submit score, it automatically would tell the teacher and the student up 95%. And it does refresh probably every 5 minutes or so. But I'll just push a refresh. And if I refresh that, it takes it off my screen, and my day as a teacher is gold because I have nobody in critical status, and I've done all my grading, and I'm done. So that, in a very brief and high level, is how easy the Brain Honey Learning Management System is and how the structure of our courses, what structure they follow. Are there any group questions that you might have that you want to text me in the text, in the little chat box? If you do want to ask a question live, you can do that as well. The next 15 minutes is in your hands. Any questions? Yeah, so Manuela Allen asked the question, is there an option to do, yes, from the admin side, if you're logged in as admin, there's a number of reports that you can run. So you can actually print those reports out. You can send those reports to a CSV file. So there's a number of ways in which you can run reports. There's about probably 20 or 30 of those that you can kind of investigate on your own. If you need extra help or support, I'm happy to answer any of those questions at another time. I'm sure Terry Bowman's team would also be able to help you in those areas as well. So you can run those reports over an individual student or a group of students. Yes, so the question is about TEKS, right? So we did do an internal review. It's not necessarily like a crosswalk where you're saying this matches that matches that. And we actually write courses primarily for 2 states, Florida and Texas. So there are some courses like sports marketing matches here, but it doesn't match Florida because some of the requirements were really couldn't do in an online setting. So there's about 40 courses that we have determined have TEKS matches. And all the new courses that are being written really are focused in on Texas and Florida. That's really what drives the U.S. market, especially in this elective category. So we do have that in there. The system itself does not automatically yet. So that's a good question. So Ms. Allen asked the question, is there an automatic plug-in for plagiarism? Now that's a great question for Terry Bowman. I know that different LMSs have integrations into Turnitin. I know Canvas does have one. So maybe that's a question Terry can search out if there is if there is an API plugin for something like Turnitin to make sure that there's no plagiarism for the student. One of the things I appreciate about open-ended questions is, you know, we're in the most part not asking students to write lengthy papers, but this is where you really get to see the reflection of a student and see how they're digesting that information and quickly know whether or not, I guess quickly know whether or not the student has an interest. That's our goal. For myself personally, I changed majors 3 times. I should have a PhD and I don't. I just have a bachelor's degree. Well, in Texas, I only paid $30 a credit hour. That's pretty cheap. I think if you go to UTA, you're not paying that anymore. So you can't really afford to do that. So our really goal as a company is to introduce those students that you're doing. And Lonnie Morgan had asked a question about what are the most popular. You know, that's great about electives. When you have so many choices, you might have one student that enjoys culinary arts and enjoys fashion design. That's a great forensic science. So you might have someone that really likes literature. So instead of taking useless and meaningless electives, they can take more literature electives. You may have a student that enjoys the humanities. They want to go into social work. So courses like peer counseling and social problems, those are great foundational courses. Alani also asked the question, what are on the horizons? I do not know totally, but there are 4 we have not announced that hopefully will make a January release. One is the Health 1 course, which will be aligned to TEKS. Another one is advertising and sales promotion, I mentioned, and restaurant management. And then a high school journalism. Because of our demand on the middle school side of journalism, we did decide to write a high school journalism course, which I think actually Texas has a code for journalism. The next question Ms. Allen asked, is there ability to modify work for a special ed student? Absolutely. So inside LMS, and I probably would spend a little more time on you, all these courses sit in your system, which means you have the ability to change and modify work. So if you wanted to add things, if you wanted to take things out, okay, there we go. So the district has a subscription to Turnitin, by the way, and Terry said she would send that out. So you can make modifications. But one of the things, by asking open-ended questions, you know that a special ed student may have the ability to respond in a sentence, where a higher level student may respond in a paragraph. So really 60–70% of our work really is on that reflective nature, application-based questions. So that alone allows you to modify it much more if everything was just based on A, B, C, D, true, false. You know, an auto-scored component. Having that reflective component allows you to make those adjustments easier and also allows you to see student progress. And when they first start commenting in courses, how is their writing skills developing over that period of the year or semester that they're in the course? And that's the last incoming questions. Are there any other questions that you might have? And I have recorded this session, so we can go back and review if anyone wants to review. And if you have direct questions, Terry and their team would be a great resource. If you have specific questions about courses and you want to go more in depth, I'm here to help you as much as I can. John also kind of is Mr. Thorburn, if you have not met him. He is the kind of professional here that's taken this project in hand. He'll be able to help as well. But my questions are scott@eDynamiclearning.com. Is there an option to print out documents? You can, in Brand Honey, print out as many things as possible. You can do that. This is a great resource, a great way to do that. But what I really encourage you to do, because all of our text is audio, that probably a better value for that student would be for them to listen to the audio podcast. And Ms. Allen asked that question, can you print out? That's a better learning exercise for them because they already see it in print, in visual, but if they can hear it too and listen to that, that's a way to do that. Is there a lockdown browser used for testing? We actually chose, you can do some of those things at this level in elective area. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but here's what we do that I've seen down at the college level. I've actually only had about 50% of the professors use a lockdown browser that I've seen at the college level so far. What we have done is we set a timer, and we use a randomized data bank of questions. So the reason why you sometimes have lockdown browsers is because you have the same test over and over and over again. And so if you go to Quizlet or Study Blue, all those sites have wonderful answers on them, right? And when you have a random bank of questions and you have a timer that really limits the time the student can do those types of activities. So that's what a lot of professors choose to do, is randomize their questions and really set a time limit where a student has no more than a minute on a question. And that's really how ours are designed as. And then all of our courses, as long as they match the TEKS, then that's the one you'll have access to. They are available to any of the RES schools, Premier's, iSchool. It all sits in their main domain. Like I just responded to Robin, we just released our 5 new courses, Middle School Career Exploration, Women's Studies, a great course. It's a film-infused course. It has 8 films in there. It would go under Advanced Social Studies or Humanities. Health Science 2, which is part 2 of our Health Science course. 2 more that I can't remember offhand. Principles of Public Service, which is also in that CT area, and then Intro to Manufacturing, which is a new one that was just released yesterday, actually. So you do have access to all courses. And again, I typed my email address, scott@eDynamiclearning.com. If you have questions that come to your mind afterwards, I'm more than happy to help answer any question you may have about a course or about how something functions. Feel free to reach out to me. This is part of our support to eDynamic. We also have other team members that do that. But since I'm personally involved, I kind of want to make sure everybody has a really good experience this first semester. And it really is a simple program that's available. And also the RES courses themselves, the standard courses, are available in the same format as this as well. And I may have to talk to their team on that, but the RES and eDynamic courses exist in the same experience. So if you need logins, now Lisa asked the question, and I won't try to pronounce the last name there, but Terry and her team, or Robin, Hannah, would have your main admin login, and that would be great. And I will record this session. It is recorded, so you can go back and use this for training purposes. I'll send a copy of this recording to Dr. Thorburn, and also send a copy to Terry and her team. But I think we got majority, yes. And so John asked the question. I would like to do a little deeper training for teachers So we hope maybe to have a couple sessions next week. And I think John is trying to work out the dates on that. So if you want to have a handful of your teachers, it don't have to be everyone in there, but if you want to have 1 or 2 teachers in there from each school, that'd be great to get a little deeper knowledge of what the courses look like, how to grade student work. You can see hopefully that it is fairly simple to do. I really enjoyed this learning management system over the many that we work with. We work with about 15 of them, and by far this is one of the better systems to work with. And I am done. I got another one in 15 minutes, so if you don't have any last questions, you can exit out early for lunch or something.
Thank you, Scott.
Hey, thank you all. I hope you enjoyed it. See you, and see John. See you in 15 minutes.